Hello and welcome to our NUMALink 101 Finance training session. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how to look up your budgets and how to utilize the finance portion of NUMALink. So first and foremost, if you're not sure how to get to NUMALink, make sure you go to My UAFS and you're going to click on the Students tab, and then under Student Life, which is in the middle, scroll down and click on NUMALink. And that will take you to the NUMALink page. You will have to probably sign in the upper right corner if you are not already logged into NUMALink. So you need to go to Manage Your Organization next. So number one, you can go down to the organization that you'd like to manage, and you can select on Manage Organization to go to that page. The other option is in your tile menu in the upper right corner next to your profile. You should click that and you can see Explore, and you'll probably see Manage. You can simply just click on Manage, which will take you to your Action Center. And on your Action Center, you can scroll down and directly click on any of your organizations from there in order to manage them. So for today, we are going to go to the Knitting Club, which is kind of a made-up organization that we're using for the training. But we do have some things we'll talk about through this. So once you're on your main page or you're managing your page, so we're managing the Knitting Club today, you will click on the organization menu in the upper left corner. You're going to scroll down to Finance and click Finance. So at this point in time, it's going to take you directly to this page as a default. You're going to see across the middle here, Purchase Requests, Funding Requests, and Accounts. So right now you can see that there have been 2 purchase requests for the Knitting Club, and you can kind of see where those are at. We're going to kind of talk about those in a minute. And on funding requests, there is currently 1 funding request out there. And then there's accounts. So let's talk about accounts first before we can kind of go in and understand everything else that's happening. So right now for the Knitting Club, there are 3 accounts. You're going to see for your organization a fundraising and revenue account, a rollover account, and an SGA allocated fees account. So the SGA allocated fees account, that's going to be however much money you were allocated from the Student Government Association for the current fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs from July 1 to June 30th. So anything that you went through a budget proposal on last fiscal year for this year is in this account. So in this case, the Knitting Club has $200 allocated to them. Your rollover account is how much money you had left over from last fiscal year. So on June 30th, what happens is all of your money gets rolled over to the new fiscal year, and it will roll up into this rollover account. There's also a fundraising and revenue account. So any money that you collect and you take directly to the cashier's office to deposit into your account, or if you have one of those online stores through the business office here on campus, that money gets directly deposited into your account. So as you create deposits at the cashier's office, the money will show up here in this account. In order to deposit money in the cashier's office, you do have to have an RSO deposit form. Right now you can find that on My UAFS by just looking in the search bar. Just type in the end of the search bar, and you should be able to find that pretty easily, and you just take that up to the cashier's office with your S-Fund number. I'll show you real quick how to get that S-Fund number if you do not know how to do that. So you have these 3 accounts. You can click on any of your accounts. When you do so, it will take you to your account details. So you can see that under this account, which is SGA allocated fees, the Knitting Club has a few different things going on here. So you can kind of see the different requests that have occurred for the Knitting Club. You can also click on transactions and see what those transactions are. So going back to requests, you can see that the Knitting Club has asked to get reimbursed for $55 for a knitting competition supplies. You can see that that has been canceled because it was not approved. You can also see that there is a knitting competition t-shirts for $150, and that was marked as completed. Also, there was a reserve fund request for $685, and that was denied. And you can see the dates and the amounts and everything that it's approved on. Transactions is going to be where you actually see kind of what happened. So here in this account, you can see that there was originally $350 that was allocated to this organization. And you can see under the memo that that was the FY19, so this current fiscal year budget allocation. And then you can see that that $150 payment also went through, and that was for those t-shirts that were mentioned. Up here at the top, you can see that the current balance is $200 in the organization. If there was any money that ended up in the process of kind of being approved but it hasn't been approved yet, it would show up in encumbered funds, and then your available balance would be the total after the encumbered funds came out. So that's a little bit about how those accounting details work. So let's look at a couple things real quick. So there's a few different ways that you can spend your money and that you can get more money. Let's first talk about how to get more money from SGA. So you are required to turn in a budget proposal every year by the first Friday of April for the next year. So if you already went through that process, then you're going to have money showing down here in your SGA allocated fees account, and that's how much money you are granted. If you are a new organization or you're an existing organization that maybe didn't have everything figured out for the new year in April, and maybe you didn't plan for a conference that you were planning to go to, or maybe another event happened that you're wanting to host but you didn't know you were going to do that in April, you do have the option to ask for money from the reserve fund through SGA. So you would do that with a funding request. So you would go up to the upper right corner and click on Create New Request and then Create Funding Request. It's going to take you to this page. Now, it's required that you put a subject in. We don't necessarily care what exactly you put down as your subject, but you can simply just type out reserve request if you'd like. And then you need to put in the amount that you would like to request. So please note that if you're an existing organization that has been around for more than a year, you can make up to one successful request in the fall semester and one successful request in the spring semester, and your limit there is $1,000. If you're a new organization who's been around under a year, you can do one successful request in the fall and one in the spring, but your limit is $500. So just kind of keep that in mind as you do your request. So I'm going to request today $250. And then there's an option to put a description in, but you don't have to. But this is a place where if you wanted to provide any additional information for the Student Government Association Finance and Allocations Committee, you could kind of add in a little bit of detail. So maybe I'm going to add in, conference expenses. And then on account, I'm always going to select this SGA allocated fees account for the funding request. And the reason for that is because the money that you would get from SGA would need to go into this account. So the correct account does have to be selected there. And then on categories, it's a little tricky because there's multiple options here, but you'll see that there's only one that says funding request only, and that is the reserve fund request. So you will click that. And then you scroll down and you're just going to see a few things. One is going to ask you how long have you been an RSO at UAFS, and you're going to say more than 1 calendar year or less than 1 calendar year. And then you're going to put your current S fund balance in there. And so I would put my current balance. I'd have to go back and look at it, but I know that there was one account that had $250 in it, so just for all intents and purposes, we're going to go with that's how much we have currently, or $200 in it. Actually, I think it's $325 total. And then I'm going to upload a file. So this is where I would provide a justification as to why I need this money. So you're going to upload a file for that. So for today, we are going to upload an Excel sheet for that purpose. And then you're going to click Submit Request. So that request is going to go to the chair of our Finance and Allocations Committee for Student Government Association. That committee will review that request, and then they will decide if that request is granted or not granted, and they will contact you with more information about if that was granted or not. Then you're going to see, if you click on Funding Requests, you're going to see where you have your different requests that you've made. So you can see that we already did one for Knitting Club, and it was denied by SJ Finance Allocations. Here's the second one, and it's currently unapproved. And so what this means is that the moment that you turn that in, it's going to be unapproved. Once SJ Finance Allocations looks at it, they will approve it or deny it. Then it will go to the Director of Student Activities to approve or deny, and then it will go to the SAO accounting stage once that money has been put into your account. If I wanted to go back and look at the request, I can go back and click on Reserve Request, which is the subject that I have here. And I can go back in and I can look at kind of all the details that I had from that request. I can go back in and look at that. So now I want to spend money. There's two ways to spend money through this process. In order to spend money though, you're going to go to Create New Request and click on Create Purchase Request. And there's two options for spending your money. There's reimbursement, which means that you have gone out and you've purchased something and you want to get reimbursed for that out of your organization's funds. The second option is a purchase order request. And what that means is that's going to be typically something that's more than $250, that is a service of some nature, and that you need the organization or the university to cut a purchase order to give to a vendor for you in order for us to pay for your purchase by check. So that's kind of what that means. So there's kind of a pay in advance of the purchase order or a pay after you purchase sort of options. So down here, you are required to put a subject and a description in. I don't necessarily care what you put in as your subject and your description. I would make it something that makes sense for your organization and how you want to keep track of everything, since all of the requests will come back and you'll be able to see them. So you might want to make your subjects based on an event. That way you can kind of go back and see how much money you have spent per event, or you may have your own system for doing that, and that's perfectly fine. So in this case, I'm going to say that I needed knitting supplies for meeting. And we're going to do this as a reimbursement. We just spent $20 even, we're going to say. And so on description, you can kind of put what you want. So you can say yarn for October meeting. So again, you can put the subject in the description of how you want on there. On account, you're going to click select and you're going to see all three of your accounts there. So you can see in my fundraising revenue account, I have a zero balance. I have $125 in my rollover and I have $200 in my SG allocated fees. So at this point, it doesn't matter which fund you select as long as the fund that you select does have funds in it. So I could not select the fundraising revenue account, but I could select either the rollover or the SG allocated fees account. I'm going to select the rollover account just for today. And on categories, I'm going to go and click on Reimbursement Request. If you notice, you have two options for the purchase request. There's Purchase Order Request and Reimbursement Request. So this is going to be a Reimbursement Request. On the Reimbursement Request, on the payee information, you're going to go in and put your first and last name. You do not have to put your street information, your mailing address information, unless you just absolutely want us to do that. Scrolling down to additional information, you see that there's a blue box that says Reimbursement Request. So if you're doing a reimbursement request, you're going to make sure that you fill everything under that blue box. So first is the payee line's ID. So that's where you're going to put in your ID number, whatever that may be. You're going to put in your email address. The name of your event, in this case it's meeting, and the date of your event. So we said it was October, so we're going to say it's going to be October 10, 2018. And then you're going to attach a copy of that original receipt. So we're going to just attach something today as that receipt. We're going to do that. So you're going to attach your original receipt there. Please note that you do also have to bring your original receipt to Chelsea Williams in the Student Life Office Welcome Center in Campus Center 115 before you can be issued reimbursement. So now you're just going to scroll down to the end and you're going to click on Submit Request. Now we're going to make a purchase order request. So you're going to go back to Create Purchase Request. And in this case, we're going to go ahead and get some water bottles for our knitting club for PR. So on subject, we're going to put promotional items. And those are going to be a little more expensive. They're going to be $100. And then for description, we're going to put imprinted water bottles as organization giveaways. And then we're going to go to account, and again, you just have to select an account that has money in it. We're going to go ahead and select the SJ allocated fees account right now. And then on category, we're going to select purchase order request. Since there's a purchase order, we don't have to put in payee information because we'll put the vendor information down below. Under additional information, we're going to skip the reimbursement request information and go to the next blue box that says purchase order request. So here it's going to ask for the organization contact email. So I'm going to just put in student activities as the email. And the vendor name I'm going to say is, we'll say graphic services here in Fort Smith. And because I don't know their information off the top of my head, you would put in the street, and then you would put in the city, the state, and the zip. So just note that you would put in the street address and the other information here. You're going to also upload a file that is the quote for those water bottles or an invoice for the water bottles. And then if you need to, or if the vendor is a new vendor and you haven't used them before, you do have to include a W-9 form, which is a tax form. That form can be found on MyUFS, or you can find it on the SAO page on NUMALink, both blank forms. But if you ask a vendor for a W-9 form, they should know what that means since it is a tax form. And then on special instructions, you're going to put any sort of special instructions that you may have. You can see it is optional, so most people don't always put special instructions, but maybe you need to have an in-hands date of those water bottles by a certain date. Maybe they need to be paid by a certain date. Maybe you need to just provide us with some more information about your order. So that's where you would do that, and then you would scroll down to the bottom and you would click on Submit Request. So now you can see those additional purchase requests in there for promotional items. It's currently in an unapproved state under SJ Finance Allocations, and then needing supplies for meeting on an unapproved state under SJ Finance Allocations. So now you kind of get to see the backside for a second of NUMALink. We're going to go in and we're going to take a look real quick. Under purchase request, we have promotional items, which is a purchase order. So what's going to happen here is myself as the director of student activities is going to go in and we're going to review everything on the page. So we're going to go through and look at it and see if this was really truly a purchase order request that came in and I saw street here, I wouldn't approve it. Plus there's not any file selected. So because of that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up and I'm going to change my stage to Director of Student Activities so you know that I have reviewed it. And then I'm going to deny it. And the reason I'm going to deny it is because there's not proper paperwork. So in comments, I'm just going to put missing attachments. I'm going to go down and save that. I'm going to go back to the request that we did for the reimbursement of Knitting Club supplies, and we're going to go through and look at that, and we're going to look at it and say, oh, it looks great. And I know obviously that is not an actual receipt, but we're going to pretend for today it is, and so we're going to say, okay, we're going to reimburse them those $20. So what's going to happen is we're going to move that to student activities, to the Director of Student Activities, and I'm going to approve that. And then I do have the option to put comments in if I'd like, but I'm not going to do that right now currently. So we're going to kind of see that process. At this point, you'll see that it's been approved, and then we're going to go back to our request, and we're going to look at that reserve fund request for Knitting Club. And what we're going to do here is we're going to say that SJ approved it. Actually, hold on a second. We're going to go ahead and complete that and say, hey, it looks good. And say save. Okay, So we're going to go back to the knitting club so you can see that. And now under purchase request, we can see that promotional items that went through, there's no approved amount and there's no date approved, and we can see that it was denied, and it was denied by the Director of Student Activities. I can always go back and click on that promotional items and scroll down and kind of look at everything that's happened there. With that, if I scroll down, I can see also where I have the knitting supplies for a meeting for $20, and that was the approved amount and the date that it was approved on, and I can see it's in an approved state by the Director of Student Activities. So what we would do is, once it's been approved by our office, you'll see that it's approved, and then once you have brought your original receipt in to Chelsea Williams in the Student Life office, and she's written the check for you, she will move that to a completed status, like this one is here, and then that means that your check is ready to come pick up. We will still send you an email letting you know that that check is ready to pick up as well. Then on funding request, you can see that the reserve fund request for $250 was approved, the date it was approved, and that it's completed. So you can see that that money is in there as well. There are some extra steps that we take on our end to actually move that money into your accounts. So that is not reflecting there just yet. But once we did that, you would see where that would be reflected in your account as well. So this is kind of the overall training for the NUMALink finance portion of the site. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact us at studentactivities@uafs.edu or contact the Director of Student Activities and myself, Stephanie London, at stephanie.london@uafs.edu. Thank you. Have a great day.